And now we welcome on former first-class cricketer, and well, now you can catch him around the globe working with the likes of Kolkata Knight Riders, Trimbago Knight Riders, Deccan Gladiators in the T10 League, and so on and so on. We welcome on Crowe to drop again. Carl, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Great to have you. I see you're in a hotel room right now. I saw you on Instagram running marathons in your room. So obviously you're in quarantine. Talk to us a little bit about how that's going.
Yeah, so I arrived back in the UK 9 days ago, and obviously, having been in India, there's now on the red list, so I've had to do 10 days in a hotel in by Heathrow, so about an hour and a half away from home. And yeah, that's literally nothing to do. So I do some reading, a few bits of writing, and just trying to keep fit as well, keep active. And so during lockdown, so during quarantine on the way out to IPL, I think I had 7 days or so there. And I've done 10K in a room 2 or 3 times on a few different quarantines, different tournaments. I think last IPL, then for T10 and a few other bits. So I foolishly put on my Instagram story during the IPL 10K. Is everyone happy with that? And of course, everyone put no. Everyone put no, do more. So the next day, I think I did 12K or something, and I said, okay, everyone happy now. Of course, everyone came back, said no, and I ended up doing a half marathon during the IPL in the room. And I was like, okay, that's it now. And then when I arrived here in the quarantine day one, just to get out there on Instagram, I was like, I'll watch it this time, and I got literally hundreds of messages from so many friends, but also well wishers, and a lot of them were saying you got to do a marathon. I was like, oh well, I've asked for it now, I better do it. And if you can see in the room, there's not a lot of space, but I did 50K. I didn't run it all. I absolutely didn't run it all. I walked quite a bit of it, but it took me almost 8 hours. But it actually it was okay. There's nothing else to do. I had a bit of TV on, listened to a book and everything, and it was okay. And it keeps us one day gone ticked off, and I was okay. So I don't mind doing that kind of stuff. Actually, yeah, I was quite comfortable, and yeah, and there's a few more challenges to go yet, but that one's okay.
I was gonna say because you posted on Instagram was give me some challenges to do on
Yeah,
during quarantine. That was one. I think you're reading a book about geography as well, right?
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I mean, you were juggling. I don't know if that was a challenge or that was just a
That was a
pastime.
challenge. That was a challenge. Yeah,
There
yeah,
you go. So what are the most obscure ones that you were just like, oh,
yeah.
there's no chance I can do that in a room? What was the most obscure one that you got?
I'm not sure I can tell you them all on a lot of podcasts. They were all not too bad. So I've got headstand, I've got dope shuffle. I've got a few of them that I'm still in a sort of process of trying. Juggling's one I've been giving it a good go. I've got to try and get to 4 balls. I'm okay with 3. I'm trying a few ideas. Um, what else was there? Just and to be fair, lots of them were circuit teachers about bowling. Lots of young Indian cricketers who are keen to do that. But yeah, some of my friends have put some pretty obscure ones that are not repeatable. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I try to throw that out there to say see if there's a possibility, but yeah, usually the boys when the boys get around something like that, it's
yeah,
never
yeah,
never one you want to
no,
put in.
no, exactly. But the 50K one, I was happy to do.
Carl, just Shady here. Just yeah, we had a quick little chat. I kind of reached out to you, and I'm obviously been following you on the Instagram as well. And I'm out here in Houston with Nitish Kumar, who you spent some time, or he spent some time with you, and you spent some with him
Mm.
out in Loughborough. I wanted to know, kind of right off the bat, sort of about your, I guess, journey coming up from obviously playing cricket. I know you played some first class cricket for Leicestershire. When was the move from playing cricket to then going, you know what, I really feel like I back myself in a bit of coaching, and how was that transition?
Well, I suppose it's ultimately boils down from love for the game. I think I've always loved being in and around the game right from a young age. I finished playing professionally properly really around 27, and most of that because I wasn't really good enough. There was no retirement. It was just I wasn't up to the standard and wasn't performing at the level that really required for that long term. And I was very fortunate to fall into it. And let me take a step back. Every winter when I wasn't playing, I was either coaching in the indoor school at Leicestershire, or if I was going away, I went to Melbourne a few times, I went to Cape Town in the winters. I'd always coach. I got an opportunity to work with the school or do some coaching somewhere. So even if I wasn't playing, I was coaching. And just I loved the game. So I loved being involved in the game at any level. And I also found that as I was coaching, it helped my game. I learned more about the game. I made more of an effort to find out, how I could help other people. And even back then, and I remember working with young players, I did get a similar buzz to seeing young cricketers improve and knowing that whatever small part you've played, you've had some an element of helping them with that. So at 27 or so, when I finished playing professionally, and ultimately, Dan, it was mentally me. I wasn't tough enough at all. Skills are okay, but I never believed in myself. I didn't have that resilience that I've gone on to gain from my second or third career. I was very fortunate to then fall into a fantastic job at a small private school in Leicestershire, Montessori school, where I was just the PE teacher, assistant to the head of PE, who has since gone on to be head of coaching at a City football club, who are in today's FA Cup final. And he's a very close friend, and he's a fantastic coach, very influential in my career. And we talk about coaching all the time. So I definitely started off as a coach, as a sort of I coached how I was coached, and then through looking back on my own career and asking questions about why I failed and why I wasn't a success, and stumbling in my first elements of my coaching career, I then sort of started searching. Okay, what is a successful coach? How do people improve? How do they learn? And why did I fail? And I was very fortunate to be in the environment of the school where I was, working 30 hours a week coaching and teaching PE. But they were all basically my learning sessions. We were trying so much in terms of how to develop skill, how to develop interest, how to develop love of the game, love of sport, love of activity, love of health, love of being healthy. And I had 5 or 6 years there where and I loved every minute of it. The school was fantastic. The ethos of the school was fantastic. It definitely influenced the way I coach. But after a while, the school had changed, and I wanted to and I was still coaching during that period. But I wanted to get into coaching full time. Was doing a bit for Leicestershire in terms of their youth squads, and I was very fortunate to get a job with the England women's girls team. I worked there for 4 or 5 years, and they were just some of the best times. I really, really enjoyed it. We went through the progression from amateur to professional sport with the girls, and it was amazing. And then obviously since then, it's just I just coach, and obviously I'm on here because you guys know that where I'm coaching. But even now, we have an academy in Leicestershire, and if I'm not coaching the superstars, I love going back and working with the 6, 7, 8-year-olds who are just starting out their game and playing with tennis balls and learning a love for the game. It's all coaching to me, and whatever level I'm at, I just love seeing, whether it's inspiring little ones to love the game like we've been fortunate to love, or trying to get 1% out of the best players in the world to win a big tournament. It's all coaching. It's all the same to me, and I'm very fortunate to love doing what I'm doing. So I suppose in a whistle-stop tour, there's my journey.
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate to that. I feel the same way. I've always been interested in coaching and always looking to give back. I also wanted to know, sort of during that transition, and with all that experience, being in England, did you find that the old school kind of traditional English way of coaching was still relevant at that time? And what was your take on that? And did you sort of transition into what you thought was a little bit more modern? And how did you sort of expand your coaching throughout that journey in that experience?
Yeah, it did. I think there's still elements of it that's quite old school, and I would, it doesn't win me too many friends, but I think ex-players don't necessarily make good coaches, and particularly ex-players who've been successful because they've done it their way, and they tend to, well, this is what a shot should look like, so go and perform that shot. And what I've learned through experience, and I'm a voracious reader and a bit of a badger in terms of looking at effective ways to develop, is that there's still an old school instructional style coaching method, and this is how it should look, and this is how we should play, and that tends to be ex-players. So yes, I have met resistance quite a lot, and I have a belief in the way it should be done. It doesn't necessarily it's right or wrong. There's who knows what is the right or wrong way to do it. But I'm certainly really clear on my philosophy, really clear on my beliefs of the way we develop, the way we improve what coaching language should sound like, what coaching should look like. But I still think there's some old school elements of that because it's safe, it's comfortable. You know, it's comfortable just coaching technique to look like a perceived model of excellence. It's not the way I prefer to do this. I don't say I started that way. I definitely started coaching how I was coached until I became self-aware that, you know, and I remember coming back to the school and, you know, you do have some light bulb moments sometimes as a coach or even in any career, I suppose. And I remember I was teaching swimming at our school and I'd studied, I think this is the progress I've made. I studied swimming technique and I knew nothing about swimming other than, you know, swimming in local baths as a kid. And I studied technique and I wanted sure I knew everything that was needed to be known about swimming technique. And I remember explicitly communicating this and I took the beginners. I used to really enjoy taking kids who couldn't swim. I think you might make the most progress there. And I remember delivering what I thought was just the best session ever. And I described that really well. And today, the kids have all shown that technique I've explicitly described, and they are nailing it. What a coach, what a teacher I am. And then they came next week, and the kids went back to start. They'd never done it before in their life. And I'm like, what's wrong with them? I taught them brilliantly last week. They nailed it. And then over a period of time, I stopped looking at them. I started looking at me. I think maybe it's what I'm doing. Maybe it's my coaching methods that are the problem, not them. And I think that when they have that level of reflection, that honesty with yourself, and you get humbled by the fact that actually you're not who you thought you were, you need to go and develop and understand a bit more. Then that sort of searching for a better way, and you look more broadly rather than narrowly at you know, technique. And I think that ex-players tend to go with what's safe. They know cricket, they haven't been out of cricket. They just go with, you know, what's safe, and I think safe for them is often. And I'm you know, I'm sounding quite hard here, but I think I'd like to see players be more humble and looking at, you know, as I was humbled, to look at the ways. And a time out of the game really helps that, I think.
And I think that's not just in cricket. I think if you look across sports, usually the best players don't make the best coaches. It's because they're used to doing things in one way. This is how they were successful. Yeah. And why can't you play the cover drive like I play the cover drive, right?
Yeah, because we can't do
it. Exactly. So that comes into play. But I want to ask you about, you've obviously, as a PE teacher, you're coaching not just cricket, football, swimming, as you mentioned. How has that helped you see things differently, not just from a just a single-minded cricket standpoint, but more so from a holistic coaching standpoint? And the second part of that is, you coach some kids as well. You mentioned you still coach some kids over at Leicester. Give me some comparisons between coaching adult superstars and coaching kids, because I think to a certain point there has to be some comparisons there too.
Yeah, 100%. So I'll start with the second question first. Absolutely, there's comparison. You know, I think learners learn, and if you're creating an environment to encourage learning, then that's the key. I read recently, what is learning? Learning is not knowledge. Learning is creating no action. And I think that's what it's about. If you're working with players and technique, you can see, but it isn't always technique. It's tactically, it's mentally, and often, you know, particularly in the higher levels and the franchises, it's a lot more tactically and mentally. But yeah, it's actually, and so often I get asked this question about even the girls' game. How's the girls' game different to the lads' game? Because I think people want it to be different, and it's not. Honestly, there's not. There's a few things. Maybe the boys have got a bit more power than the girls, but it's like I loved working with the England women's team because it was girls playing at the top of their level, maximising their potential, and the game still played. You just have to think, you know, tactically of working with individuals, and it is absolutely working with individuals. Coming back to you know, I remember my very first lesson at school was the prep school for gymnastics, and I was like, what on earth am I going to do here? and the default was come back to technique because that's safe with what you can see. But what you can see, you know, your eyes lie to you a lot for me. So this is my journey to learning more about explicit learning, teaching games for understanding, creating game challenges and constraints to develop technique. And it was through all that. It was incredibly game centered. I'm still game centered. And in fact, you know, we think that we think that, to be top level sportsmen or whatever it might be, we're going to be only serious and solemn and all that kind of stuff. Well, let me tell you, during this last IPL, after one of the training sessions, we came back and there was a lovely team room, huge team room at KKR. So outside the team room was, again, a big foyer room. And when we got back from one of the training sessions, we had a team function. And in that foyer room, some of the hotel staff that were in our bubble were playing an indoor game of cricket with a softball and a hard bat and just playing. And let me tell you, within 20 minutes of coming downstairs, there were probably 10 or so cricketers playing this indoor game with a soft ball, the kind of stuff you give your kid, and an indoor bat, playing this game. And they were flying around. And I'm talking about, international cricketers as well playing with them. And just loving getting lost in the moment. We're all kids at heart still. We love playing the game. And if you can adapt your coaching to have a challenge or game element of it, I think you keep the player engaged for longer. And if it's done effectively, I think it's a positive on technique, a real positive. And the skill is, I think this, and last point on this is that the skill is, and this is what I spent probably most of my time doing. You have to work incredibly hard to make it look like it's not been planned, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You take a serious amount of planning, and one of our ethoses at school, and I talk about school a lot because you can clearly understand it's a huge effect on me. We wanted it to be organised chaos. It was incredibly well planned to look like chaos. If that makes sense. And same thing with training, with you working with players. You work incredibly hard to plan and work out what's going to be the best environment today for them to progress their game, or the better plan for the game if it's tomorrow.
And I think that comes with planning for a specific skill that doesn't look like that looks like you're planning for a specific skill, right? It's that game environment to make it fun and competitive. But on that point, I think we've talked about the evolution of not yourself personally, but also the game of cricket, the game of coaching. And one of the things that's really evolved is this idea of specialization, especially in the T20 format per se. I mean, you look at, I'm not going to go down the list of KKR today, but you look at the list of teams and the number of coaches, support staff they have. I mean, I think the England national team travels with more support staff than they do with players these days. So this idea of having very specialized and niche coaches, yourself, your specialties in T20 cricket and spin bowling, obviously, but you can coach everything really. How hard is it to stay in that niche when you're in that niche, though? Like, I saw a picture of you on Instagram standing behind Andre Russell and with Sunil Narayan behind you. How hard is it to, you see something, but that's not your area? How hard is it to maybe stay away, or is it not hard and you say, no, that's, so-and-so's job?
Well, I think, you're quite right. Firstly, if there are specific roles in team, you don't want to go treading on toes of, a batting coach or coach. But you made the comment, coaching is coaching, and if you love the game and you're a student of the game, and you like helping out, it's sometimes, someone like Sheldon Jackson, who you've interviewed, who's a fine player, a good human being, and become a good friend. There are still things with Sheldon that if I see, I'll go and mention, just look here, I've seen this. I know you've got your coaches. I know you've got guys you work with. But I've noticed this because even I would always say lots of players who I work with personally, I'm not the keeper of all knowledge. And often, sometimes, if you see a player so regularly, you can miss things. So I'm always keen to hear other people's opinions, other people's feedback. And you're quite right. What you can tend to do as well is also filter it through the coach. So rather than go to the player and say this, and then actually you might end up scrambling and confusing their mind. If you go to the coach and say, look, I've just seen this. And if you've got a good relationship, someone like, let's say someone like James Foster, who was at KKR as a fielding and a keeping coach, is a good friend. He knows if I would go to him as equally as he would come to me, there's going to be no ego around me saying, don't talk to me about spin bowling, Foster, because, I'm a spin bowling guru. I'd be going, okay, international coach, player, let me hear what, then you go back and reflect and think, okay, can I use that? Is it relative? Have we tried that before? And I think good people, you want to be a good person. And so you know that and I always say this, and I sometimes come away from tournaments feeling a fraud because I think I've learned more there than I've given because I've been around so many good people, so many good players. And I'm a sponge and still learning. You end up, okay, I heard that. You think, I tried to help out there, but I've got this information to go away and help some more. But I think also as well, and this is one thing I was really aware of, right from early on working in these teams, and it is competitive. Of course, everyone wants to be there, but I will never coach for the sake of it, to be trying to be seen to be a coach, to try and get in there. And for me, I'd rather stay back and only make it. If I only make one intervention for a whole tournament, it makes a difference. I'd rather be able to look myself in the mirror and say I did it for the right reasons, rather than did it to be seen to be a coach. And we need to have Carl here because he's so good at doing this. You want to give the best of yourself. And I'd say on the back of that, I do feel players then feel you as genuine. If you are helping, you're helping genuinely, not because you're trying to further your career or you're trying to, look how much Carl helped me, so you've got to come again. That just doesn't sit well with me. And I do feel that if you're more there to help genuinely, on the back of that, I think people know, coaches know, team owners know, players know, and the rest take care of itself. You'll be in demand because you're there for the right reasons, rather than you're just trying to further your career.
I wanted to step in and ask a question around the different players and the backgrounds and the different cricket cultures that they come from within franchise cricket.
Yeah.
How difficult or how easy is it? Obviously they're professionals, but someone who comes from Jamaica, let's say, like an Andre Russell, versus somebody who's from Bangladesh. How does their cricketing backgrounds and that culture come into play with regards to you as a coach and sort of, obviously it's very player centered, and, in these short tournaments of franchise cricket, how easy, how difficult is it to understand that sort of cultural background and then start to implement your ideas and your methods of coaching?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think understanding this is one of the keys to working in different environments. I mean, I feel I'm very lucky in that I'm a naturally inquisitive person. I'd love to go to every country in the world. I love different cultures. I love going to the Caribbean. I love the people there. I love the people in India. I've been to Canada quite a few. I love that. I love learning new things and absorbing myself in new cultures. So I'm naturally inquisitive. I think that helps me learn more about people, because ultimately it's still people, still human beings. And while we have got difference in cultures, often we can find connections. I think it's about making players feel, like I said, you're there for them, not there for yourself. And if you're interested in them and helping them with no motive, that certainly helps. But also, I listened to a podcast in the UK recently, and it was an American football guy, and I'm going to butcher the story, but I can't remember his name, but it really struck home with me. And the question was there about going to different environments. And I think one of the best things you can do is forget what you think you know. Don't go in there with a preconceived idea. This is how we do it in England. This must be the way we do it. This is how we do in county cricket. This must be the way it's done. And if you do that, you'll fail in the first 2 days and you'll be going home. You have to embrace the way things are done. So, I've been incredibly lucky to work in with the exception of, I think, the South African League, and maybe the New Zealand. I think I've done every tournament around the world, and just go there with open mind to how the game is played there, how they train, how they talk about the game, how they prepare for the game. And if you mold yourself into that model rather than try to get them to fit you, I think you've got the best chance of being successful. And I'd say it's easy for me because I love it. I embrace it completely. I think, if I go to India and learn the way that the game is played over here, and learn the way that they approach things, and not only is it that my coaching skills, when I come back to another environment, you've got broader skill and a bigger toolkit to be able to adapt accordingly. But you have to, and you're right about player centered. It's clearly it's a common phrase that we use and like to use, but it's just people. It's just being there for them and understanding them and what's their drivers and goals, and just without any motive, how can I help you? If I can't help everybody, and I wouldn't have the ego surf and go in there and help every cricketer. But if I can help you, I'm here for you. If you want me, yes. If you got guys who are okay, no worries. You give it all your best. Yeah, I think that's the way I'd view it.
The point you make there is learning about people, but that coming from an Englishman is something fairly new, because England cricket for a long time was, this is how we do it, this is how we play cricket, and we're not going to evolve. But we've seen that in the national team. Is that really a philosophy change in England as a whole now, is saying, if we're going to keep up, obviously they won the 2019 World Cup by doing this, is if we're going to keep up, we've got to really understand how the best teams in the world are doing it, and we've got to evolve. That would you say that's now part of just the English philosophy as a whole?
Yeah, I think so. I
Or
think
cricket as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think both. Yeah, I'll come to cricket and probably England first. Is that I think England were humbled again after a long time about we're England. We're England. We invented the game, and one of the words I just like to hear a lot is tradition. Oh, it's tradition. It's an excuse for not changing. You need to think differently, and the thinking differently. I mean, Owen Morgan, who obviously captained KKR, but not single-handedly by a long way, but clearly drove the England team to change their way of thinking and change this is the way we do it, because other countries have less tradition than the UK. They're not bound by those feelings, oh, this way we've always done it, so we're going to try new ways. It's no coincidence for me that the mystery bowlers are from India, from Pakistan, from West Indies, and from Sri Lanka, and from Afghanistan and Canada. You have your own guys. England, there's still elements of, no, you coach this way, this is the way you bowl. And we have to get away from, this is the way you do it, this is the way it should be done. So I actually done a webinar this morning in India with an institute, Omsex Institute in India. And we had a webinar, and there's a couple of questions there about traditional way of bowling. We have to get away from that traditional way of what is good. We're still clapping 50s in T20 cricket. It mind boggles. I can get 50 off 50 and we'll clap someone. That's going to lose you the game.
Yeah.
It's about strike rate. It's about hitting boundaries. When you're bowling, it's about not hitting boundaries, preventing boundaries. It's not spin bowling in T20 cricket. Isn't that perfect, beautiful, lovely Nathan Lyon style off spin? It's often dirty and ugly, but it's about being effective and being very skillful, but being effective in that game. And I think that's it from a coach's perspective. It's sometimes tearing up what you think. I had an incredible mentor who unfortunately passed away a year or so ago, Keith Lyons, and he said to me was, there is no should do. There is no should. And I think if you have that mindset of there isn't one way to do it, there's a multitude of ways to do it. That's exciting. I find that exciting. Of let's explore what's possible, not this is the way it should be, because there's a limit on that. And so I think English cricket no doubt has changed their mindset and is far more open now. I think the 100 is a classic example of English cricket, where we're at now. There's a small, quite vocal minority in the UK who are county cricket should be here. It's been here for 100 years, and we're ruining the game. Well, if you go to a county game, there are a few hundred people going to watch. No one's there. No one's watching a 4-day game. Some of the bigger counties have a few more, but some of the smaller counties, no one's going to watch. The T20, 20 years ago when it first started, I was very fortunate at Leicestershire to be a PCA rep. So I'll be one of the reps for the team, and there'll be 18 of us. And we sat in a small room when the ECB presented to the reps the idea of cricket, T20 cricket. And most of the room was like, what? That's what kids play. Why would we possibly think about doing that? That's going to ruin the game. It's going to be, rubbish. Well, 20 years later, here we are, not too many players now are rubbish in T20 cricket. I'm hearing the same conversations around the 100. And my view would be, how do we know that T20 is the finished product? How do we know it's the finished article? Why not keep trying? So as I said, the 100 is a metaphor for English cricket. There's still a small minority who are trying to tug us back and hang us onto, bygone era, which is not the world anymore. 100 is the future. Now, it might be wrong. I would much rather put my name to something which might fly, but might also be a disaster, might fail, than be comfortable being in county cricket where there's only a few hundred. And I'm not talking about the 4-day stuff, which, by the way, I still adore. I still love the 4-day cricket in the UK. And when I get back,
I've been watching it on YouTube still. So
yeah. My county, which I'm with, Lancashire, when I get back, I can't wait to join them. We've got a 4-day game next week. I hope to be there. I adore 4-day cricket, but in the future of the game, we have to think what's next, not what has been. That makes sense. And if we do that, we can protect the 4-day cricket. We can protect it and keep it going.
Yeah. That conversation you just had about people saying no, you're going to ruin cricket.
Yeah.
if you think about it, they said the same thing about when we were going to one day cricket, right? From
Yeah,
Test cricket.
yeah, yes,
And then the same thing from unlimited days to limited days. It's the
yeah,
same
yeah,
conversations.
absolutely.
And the point that you're making there is, if you don't know, if you don't try, and
Mm.
this could be the next wave and the next great thing. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to be something completely different than we've seen before, because there's
Mm.
actually rule changes to to overs and number of balls a bowler can
Mm.
bowl. So that's going to be exciting. Uh, which brings me to this point: is you didn't play a lot of T20 cricket, right? None for counties. Um,
I played one game.
well, you got to tell Crick Info that, because they didn't have it on Crick Info. So you might want to send an email there. um,
Maybe he's been smashed around the ground. He doesn't want to.
he asked them to remove it.
That was most games. I'd remove all my career then. That was the case.
But so you didn't really have a lot, and we talked a little bit earlier about the best players don't necessarily make the best coaches, but the other side of that, the other argument is how do you gain the respect of the players in what you're saying when you haven't personally done it? And so my question to you is, what comes first? Is it the respect factor in order to be a great coach, or do you have to be a great coach in order to earn the respect? And how are you able to do that?
I think it's a brilliant question. I mean, if I go into a room, or if, let's say, Joe Root walks into a room, if you've not been in around what I've been in around, everyone knows who Joe Root was. No one's got an idea who I am. So credibility straight away. Credibility is with Joe Root, England captain. I have limited credibility. But I think there are two or three elements here. Is that playing is not coaching and coaching is not playing. I think it's the first thing. That without a shadow of doubt, the best players are their own coaches, no doubt about it. So I don't profess to come in and know more than the players who are there under any circumstances. No player has ever asked me about my playing career, because whether they know and don't want to know, don't bother. Or players want one or two things really. Can you help me? Can you help the team? That's what they want. And so that's where your focus has to be. And that might not be, it's not the idea of a coach for me isn't I know more than you, I'm going to help you. It's how can I help you be more self-aware? How can I help you be a better coach for yourself? And sometimes it's technical. Sometimes it's definitely me sharing information. This is what I see. Some of the guys I work with, yes, it's like, okay, try this, try that, but it's ultimately their game. And so if you're there for them, if you're there helping them get better for themselves, players don't care what player you are, because what happens then is, and this is my view, and of course I say that because this is where I'm at, is if a player comes in, ex-player comes in having been a superstar, and I come in credibility-wise, around here, then in 3 or 4 months' time, or even 3 weeks' time, or 3 days' time, if you're working with a small tournament, then credibility then is about how you can help them, and credibility starts to swap. Where if an ex-player hasn't got enough to give them in terms of helping them play, but I'm in my experience, and I can share that it's not me, but I've worked with the 10 best spinners, let's say, in the world. This is what they do. This is how they prepare, and that's information that's going to help them play the game, be a better player. Not, this is how I did it, because no one wants to know how I did it, because it's not relevant.
Yeah. I can also provide a little insight with that, because when I reached out to you, Carl, I mentioned, I'm working with Ali Khan a little bit, and immediately what Carl had said was, I love Ali Khan. He's like a son to me. And for me, what that told me was that, Carl really spends time with the individual, getting to know the individual. And I think that in terms of earning that credibility, it's more about earning the trust as well of the player.
Yeah.
And in turn, I would say, good coaching kind of has the players almost answering their own questions, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's through, constraint-led coaching or experience in general. And I just thought that with experience and with what you said about that, I felt like, like this is someone who truly cares about the players, and in turn, those players will end up trusting you and sort of, having you or allowing you to sort of guide them through. And I thought that was very interesting and just kind of inspiring as well.
Yeah, and I think that trust is incredibly important, Shady, because if you're going to help them, they've got to open themselves up and allow themselves to be vulnerable. And certainly, I have to be vulnerable as well. I can't be like, I've got all this information, you're going to be lucky to hear it from me. I haven't got all the information. I wasn't a top player, but I think I could probably help you. I think you can help you in the game tomorrow. your home game going away, and then they can open up and say, this is what's really happening with me. This we're all wearing the mask, we're all wearing the front. My Instagram, which I'm working hard to be better on. I put on there, my juggling trick, but I haven't shown you the 2 hours of me dropping it. I'll show you my highlights.
Yeah,
and that's often how we live. And so many of the players who, when they've got some dark thoughts or dark moments, or they're really struggling, they have to know that if I'm going to share this with my coach, he's not going to expose me. He's not going to say, well, we can't play him tomorrow because he's nowhere mentally. You can go, okay, right, this information, what are we going to do about it together? How can we turn it around in half a day, in a week, in a month, in a year? What's going to take? And for them to be truly honest with you, they've got to know that you're on their side. I'm not going to use this information to further my own career. I'm going to use to help you get better. And then I'll go on to my next thing, whatever that might be.
I also wanted to ask you something. Like, I noticed that during the IPL, you're often sort of tagging some of the lesser known players as they sort of walk towards the bus and having a good sort of bit of banter and laugh about that. Is that something that you specifically want to kind of give them a bit of exposure, give them a little bit of confidence in the Instagram, or is that just something going, this is me, Carl, and this is my personality? And
just people that I'm with. There's people that I'm aware and friendly with, and I don't have a particular motive for that. Just guys that I see and that I'm friendly with.
Which kind of brings us, you're on Instagram, you're working hard on that. And the IPL was obviously a really great opportunity to work on that. Unfortunately, it had to be postponed. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that was like, hearing about, and Varun was the first one to really be diagnosed, come back with a positive result. What was that situation like inside the team room? I mean, I'm sure there was a little bit of thought of, here we go again, like what's going on here. What was that like?
Yeah, I think there's obviously the team, there's the staff around. There's a big staff around the team, and there's obviously quite a few Indian players, but also some of the guys I'm quite close with, the marketing, all the staff around the team. We're very aware that they've all got families in and around the country, and the cases were sky high. And I think also, as I mentioned about, I'm working on my Instagram game, but I stopped because I felt it disrespectful to be posting pictures of the team or everyone having slightly happy faces, when actually the other side of the bubble, the country was starting to feel a lot of pain. I think the rest of the team and the support staff and around were of the same opinion. Very, very concerned about what was happening, but also at the same time, I was aware, because I do read quite a bit, on social media and try and get a groundswell of what's happening. Is that I think the country wanted IPL to continue for as long as possible, because, and there's a number of reasons, and it's been very similar in the UK for the last 3 or 4 years. We've had two main news stories: Brexit and COVID, and that's been constantly hammered at the country for 2-3 years. And after a while, it just becomes quite exhausting mentally
and numbing.
And so we talk, and numbing. Yes, we talk about mental health, and actually, the Sky News and BBC News talk about how detrimental is to mental health, and yet they're constantly hammering negative. So I think the feeling of the country was IPL was a release, 3 or 4 hours an evening. It was a release where the pain of family members being ill or friends being ill, and the country suffering great pain. 3 or 4 hours of losing and coming together as a family in a safe environment in their home, and that's another thing. They were staying inside to watch it. So I think that whilst there's a contradiction of these players playing, and when the whole situation outside the bubble was bad, I think the country also recognised the huge value it brought. And then also people staying inside in the evenings. People were not going outside, not meeting, because there was hope with their family, watching the IPL. But I think obviously as the cases started to then take hold inside the squads, the tournament had to finish. And then obviously it was about taking care of the people that were ill. And I think also as well, if that it came to home that nothing was ultra safe, and I think the best thing was to do was just cut it short. And then I think that they tried to continue, but I think also the respect factor of players being poorly, and then nerves around what was happening. So I think it was the right call ultimately.
And you speak about mental health there. It's a challenge for players as well. We talk about not just the situation in India, but the whole last couple of years having to go from bubble to bubble to bubble, quarantine to
Mm.
quarantine to quarantine. Coaches don't really get the same look as the players do, but you guys are going through the same thing, really.
Yeah,
The other part of that is you almost have to be that shoulder for players to lean
mm.
on and stay focused because there's all this going on around them, but at the same point, they have to go on the field and perform at their highest level, or else
Yeah,
they're going to be judged day in day out.
mm.
Yeah.
They don't get any excuses as players,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So how
yeah,
hard is it for you to have to balance your own personal mental health versus also having to be that caregiver and that
Yeah.
yeah.
mentor to
Good
some of these
question.
other guys?
Good
Yeah, I
question.
think it is a good question because that's your role ultimately to give and to support. I mean, I've got to say, I feel pretty lucky that I'm okay with my own company. I'm okay with my room, sitting, reading. You know, I'm quite happy doing that.
That's
But I'm
rare.
certainly
That's
reckon,
rare.
yeah,
I can't
yeah,
spend 10 minutes
yeah.
alone with myself.
But I'm very aware that that's I'm probably not normal. And like
Yeah.
many people would tell you, I'm not normal. But so you definitely whether it's text or like in the evenings, there's a group of people who would be in the team room playing pool and they're on the Xbox or some of the young lads like Shuman Gill and Mavi and Megakoti, they're all playing on PlayStation FIFA while some of us are playing pool. So I'm definitely aware to make sure that you are making sure you're just there for them. So I'm pretty lucky there. I mean, the bubble, I've been several bubbles now. So I've done quarantine. In fact, someone asked me yesterday how many quarantine days I've done, and I reckon I'm over a month at least quarantine
Wow.
days. In different IPL, T10, 50 over tournament in Caribbean back home. It must be 30, 40 days. Um, but yeah, it's not been too much of a challenge. So I kept myself busy, like I say, with reading and in my room running and running and walking. But you certainly recognise that that's not the norm. The one thing I would say about IPL is it's probably a little bit different. In generally, I'm talking very generally, particularly for the superstars, they can't go out anyway during IPL. I mean, they can move
Yeah.
around the hotel clearly because the hotel's a safe space for them. But when I during IPLs normally, one of my best friends at KKR is Shrikant, the SD analyst.
Yeah.
We'll go out to the mall, do some shopping, etc. We're okay. You might get the odd people look at us sideways, but no one really knows who we are. But Narayan, Russell,
Yeah.
Shuman Gill, these guys can't go out anyway. During IPL. So the it's not an extreme quarantine for them, but it's clearly in the hotel. We're in our own part of the hotel, not able to move around freely. And their friends can't come and see them. I think that's probably the biggest thing. It isn't necessarily getting out. It's friends coming to see them.
Yep.
Coming to the game after. One of the and I missed the first few years of IPL, but an after game IPL party is it's a pretty serious party.
Yeah.
So it's those kind of things were missed the last 2 years where it's all been the focus been towards the game. You play the game, relax for a few hours, friends and family come in and share the space for a few hours, and go back on work the next day. So yeah, it's a great question.
And this is something Usman Khawaja spoke about on another podcast. We don't like to say the names of the competitive podcast, but we do
Quite
listen
right.
to them. But he said that it was easier for him to manage his quarantine and being in a bubble because he's traveled to the likes of India and Sri Lanka and been in the IPL where, you know what, you're really in your hotel room or
Yeah,
in the hotel and not really going out. Whereas some of the first class cricketers that have never done it
yeah,
and used to just
yeah,
being, able to be free
yeah.
and go out, it was a lot harder and a lot tougher for them,
Mm,
which leads to your point. Um,
yeah,
my second last question to you is, we see these personalities on a day-to-day basis. You also see them on a day-to-day basis, but from a different lens or a different point of view. From your standpoint, is there one personality that you met that really surprised you saying, I thought, you were this either
Mm.
super quiet person or this super loud person in front of the media, but you're
yeah,
completely opposite? Because I know there are, from our side, I mean, Shady and me, on like when I'm doing a podcast, I'm very talkative. But if you meet me in person, I'm usually generally a little bit quieter until
yeah.
it's 12 a.m. Then that's a different story. Uh, but yeah. So is there one that stands out to you?
um, hmm. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'd have to give it a good think and come back in a few months and probably answer that question. But I think the one thing I would say is And I think particularly when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about the West Indian cricketers particularly, is that West Indian cricketers have a persona of laissez-faire, don't really care, rock up and play, and that's the way that whether it's the media like to portray them or people who observe them like to talk about them, and nothing can be further from the point. Nothing can be further from the truth. These guys know the game inside out, know their own game inside out, know the players inside out. They work incredibly hard on the game. Everything's prepared and planned for, so they can go and play with that freedom. And I think it's not judging what you see in front of you. You know, like one of the guys clearly I've worked with a lot over the years is Sunil, and I've seen a few on Twitter where people will be talking about celebration and he doesn't celebrate. I think one guy recently, either on my Insta or Twitter, mentioned about, why doesn't he celebrate wickets? I'm like, well, not showing any emotion, not celebrating are two different things.
Yeah.
Not the same thing. And so I think that not judging what you see is a lesson for us all. These West Indian guys, just brilliant to talk about the game with. We're like Kieran Pollard knows everything about the opposition, knows who to bowl, where to what, how they play. If you see him, it's not like unrelaxed and cool, just play carefree. Yes, they're carefree, but boy, do they work hard on their game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest lesson. So it's a general answer to you, but it's not. Again, it's the point I made earlier. It's not going in there with eyes wide open and not making any judgment and not making any assumptions. And these guys reach the top not through accident, not through just skill level.
Yeah.
The skill level gets you to a certain level. Beyond that, these guys are incredibly well knowledgeable about it.
And the reason I asked that question was to kind of lead you towards the West Indies players, because we had Jason Mohammed on the show a couple of episodes ago, and Imran Khan as well, who you've worked with, Mark Dayal as well that you've worked with. When you see him on the field, they've all played in Toronto in the local leagues as well. So we see him off the field. They're just generally very jolly, easygoing, really calm on the field. They don't really show emotion. But when you talk to them, they know their game inside and out, and they work extremely hard on their game. And that's and the point that you make was exactly the way I wanted to lead you. So I'm going to give myself a pat on the back on leading you there. Go.
Jason Mohammed, when I was over really in Toronto, in Trinidad, but we at Antigua side for the tournament, we ended up winning in that tournament. And obviously, Vicious was there and played beautifully. Jason was outstanding in our team. And obviously we had the superstars, the Pollards, the Narines, the Purans, the Simmons, the Lewis, so many superstars. And he carried himself exceptionally well. He stood out for me because he didn't try to be like them. He knew his game, knew how he played, and he offered every game. I think he bowled and batted beautifully, and I was incredibly impressed by him. And he's a guy that no one really knows too much about outside the West Indies. Yeah. But what a cricketer he was! What a man.
That's basically where I was going. I'm close with Jason Mohammed. I speak with him quite often, and I'm a huge advocate for Imran Khan, and that's where I was going. Was these guys are not the big personalities in West Indies cricket, but they are damn good cricketers, and just from a mental standpoint, how they're able to harness all those emotions and again look like almost as if they're doing it easy. And Sunil and the same token, I know Sunil is very off the field. He's a character for sure. And boys love that, but the fans don't get to do that. I wanted to know, and we spoke about Mark Dayal as well and Jason Mohammed, who are for us are batsmen and played in Canada as batsmen. And we almost like to think that playing in Toronto on the spinner and the dust bowls over there, they get a bit of a bowl, and all of a sudden they're international bowlers. Working with spinners, I just kind of wanted to pick your brain about any diamonds in the rough coming up, anyone who you feel is got something to really offer the international game, and just a little bit of thoughts around your specialty, which is spin bowling.
I think it's probably I've moved into a level where I don't see too many players who are on that level below. So it's tricky. That's a tricky question. I've worked obviously with Mark Dayal. I like his uniqueness in what he bowls. I hope to see him in the future. I think his batting will help his bowling a lot.
For sure.
But I like that creativity. I like to, and we talked earlier about changing your mindset as a coach. I just love creativity. I love what's the next thing, who's going to come, and obviously Varun Chakravarti at KKR. I just love his bowling because it's so unusual.
Yeah.
And as coaches, it challenges your mindset, it challenges your knowledge. And if you go, well, that's not the way you can do it, there's so many guys out there proving there's another way. I get lots of, again, on my social, you have to plug my social media because I need the numbers up. but I get a lot of.
We were hoping you'd get our numbers up.
Well, let's go for it. I get a lot of young cricketers message me and saying, look, sir, can you help me with my action? Can I help with my bowling? My answer is always, let's not look at what the technical model of perfection looks like. Let's go look down the far end. What are you doing with the ball? And if we have the mindset of anything's possible, then who knows what we can create. And Varun's story is fantastic. He's gully cricket, didn't play cricket really much as a spinner as a youngster, just played around with it and see what's possible. Same thing with Dayal. He can do exactly the same thing. And I think that's why you mentioned about coaching earlier. My view is it's coached out of cricketers in England. I think it's probably coached out of cricketers in Australia. And my concern for the future of cricket is because coaching is clearly a career and it can be quite lucrative. Even if you're working locally, you're getting paid one-to-ones for doing, it's still quite lucrative, even if it's just topping up from your career. And my concern is, and I don't want to sound grand here, but I was definitely there, is that when you have a little bit of knowledge as a coach, there's one way of doing it. I think, for me, simplicity comes after complexity. So you have to have a wide view to be able to come back and work out what simple looks like for me. So my encourage to developing players and coaches is that coming back to, my mentor, there is no should do. There is no way of doing it. It's, just find a way to achieve whatever you're trying to work to achieve. Spin's about deception. It's not about just break off the pitch. It's about so many different things. So is fast bowling, so is batting. That creativity you mentioned about the young spinners. I don't know too much about, but I really hope there are lots out there observing these great bowlers and thinking and probably ignoring the coaches when the coaches are saying to them, do it this way. Hopefully they're ignoring them and going, I'm going to prove to you wrong. And that's, as a coach myself, I hope they're ignoring coaches.
And I'm sure when you see Chakravarti doing what he does, like how often are you just like, what are you doing? How is this happening with this is so against what I've seen in my time. And again, that's for you, it's just always learning, right? As well from them.
Yeah, correct. And that's even to the point now where I'm very reluctant to show cricketers' grips. Very reluctant. Right. I'll show you how the ball, I've got the ball here somewhere. I'll show you how the ball has to behave, but how you make it behave that way is entirely up to you.
It's, I got to say about guys like Sunil, Chakravarti, Ashwin, they've got to have strong fingers. Like their fingers must be like shaking. I don't want to shake their hands. Like I obviously COVID now, I don't want to do it in that case, but I think they'll probably break my hand if I shake it with them as well. But you talk about innovation. Rayan Parag almost bowling underhand in the IPL this year as well, right? So it's fun and interesting to see. But the pundits come out in full lore when something like that happens because they're like, no, not good for the game. So last question, we're gonna stop cricket. We're gonna stop coaching. I see the smile already on your face because you know where I'm going with this. And in about 2 hours' time, the whistle will blow, and it's going to be Leicester City versus Chelsea in the FA Cup final.
Correct, yes.
We've talked about evolution from a cricket standpoint and a coaching standpoint. Let's talk about the evolution of Leicester City here for a second. How excited are you for today's FA Cup final?
Yeah, well, obviously it's my home city. I've always supported Leicester. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a die-hard dairy for game type of fan as a youngster.
You can't be. You're around the world.
Exactly. As a youngster, I went to a lot of the games, but obviously since then, you don't have quite the same amount of time to go. As I mentioned to you, the guy who was head of PE at the school was so influential on me. He's now head of coaching at Leicester, the football club. So I've actually gone into a little bit of work there on occasions, and we talk regularly about coaching still. So I know the philosophy of the academy, the football there, and we obviously talk regularly. And do you know what? It's, there's not necessarily a lot of rocket science to it. A lot of it's what we've talked about today. The owners, I think, are fantastic from what I understand. I know probably rich owners from overseas get a lot of bad press in the UK. But I think one of the reasons why Leicester are quite popular and often a lot of people's second favourite teams because the owners have been very much focused on
Yeah.
Leaving the players, leaving the team alone, letting the manager do his job. If ever you come to the UK, try and visit the ground, because it's a pretty impressive place now, and when the games are on, it's pretty noisy. And I think also as well, there's an element of, in the city itself, it's had a successful football team for a while now. The rugby team has been successful for a number of years. The cricket team, although not quite so much, fortunately in the era where I played, won a lot of trophies, and even after the T20, there's a very strong basketball team. It's a feeling of city that punches well above its weight in the country, and when you have that underdog but can still compete and perform at any level in the city, we feel like we can compete with anybody, I think. And so yeah, I'll be sitting in front of my TV in my hotel room, phone off, not that anyone will call me, windows closed, with a cup of tea, English tea, and watching the game, and I'm really excited about it, because I think it's also a nice story. Like I said, the owners obviously are wealthy, but it's not the Man City, Chelsea type of hundreds of millions thrown at the team. I think that's one of the nice stories about it. And
for sure,
when we won the Premier League 3 or 4 years back, I think the whole world was taken, and I think probably inspired by what could be possible. It's not it was seemed a closed shop to the rest of the world. Man U, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, that's it. Outside those four, no one will ever win it. And I think it one of the reasons it's an inspirational story, because it gives us all hope that we can all do something that nobody might think possible, because if the stars align and work really hard and smart, we might be able to do it.
I remember watching, it was the documentary called Ashes Fever from 2005, and one of the quotes from that I always remember is, the big teams are expected to win, so it's great when they win, but when a smaller team wins, it's euphoria. It's nothing like you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it's come to a point now where Leicester City they're expected to win as well, so the tides have turned. But my question to you is, what kind of a watcher are you? What are you going to be like in your hotel room today? Are you one that just sits back quietly with a cup of tea, as you mentioned, or are you like me, which is cursing and yelling at the TV when things aren't going your way?
Do you know what? It's something that I will never understand that. Like, I'm happy. Like, if you win, that's good. If you don't, I get disappointed. So much so that my 13-year-old son is a football man. He loves his football, and sometimes I watch some of our parents, the way they're going off. I'm like, just remember, it's 13-year-old boys playing football. Just calm down. And so, but I'm an interested observer, and probably maybe some of that is because of the world I'm in. I end up being engrossed in what's happening rather than the results. Yeah, what's happening? Yeah. What's trying to work out what the tactics are, what strategy they're employing, the game. Yeah. Clearly, I want Leicester to win, and I'll be delighted if they do. But I end up immersing myself in. I wonder what the manager's doing when they cut to him, looking at the behavior. I'm intrigued by the manager's behaviour in football. Intrigued by it, because soccer, as I'm sure you guys over there would call it. Because what amazes me, and I can't get my head around it at all, is that we spend 5, 6, 7 days in the week working on training, working on the tactics for the game, or whatever that might be. Now, for me as a coach, I'm not saying a job's finished there. You can still add value, but then I trust the players I've worked with to go off and then perform. If we don't perform, then we can look back at what we did in training. What strikes me as peculiar is you have days and days training, and then the manager stand on the sideline for 90 minutes shouting broad directions at their players, or where they should stand and do this and do that. That doesn't compute with me. I don't get that. I like to watch managers who sit down and are quite calm for 90 minutes and go, do you know what? Occasionally, of course, maybe some direction, and because even as a cricket coach, I don't like to give messages, but sometimes you see things and think, do you know what? People are in the moment, they don't see it, but when you're standing back, you might see that. Yeah. But for the majority of the time, trust them to go and play, trust them to go and if they get it wrong, I trust them to get it right again and learn that lesson. So for the next 80 minutes of the game, they won't do it again. But if I keep telling them the answer, you have to keep looking at me for the answer. So I'm, to come back to your earlier question, I'm looking at managers, how they're performing and how that relates to the way the players are. So I end up probably getting lost in that. But no, I think one of the things I've very tried to do is control my emotion a lot wherever we're at. So no, I won't. If we win, it'll be like I'll put the kettle on for another cup of tea, probably.
Spoken like a true coach.
Yeah.
Carl, thank you so much for this. I think you've still got some time to get maybe 20 or 30K in your room there as well. No, we really appreciate you coming on. This was fantastic, and wish you and Leicester City all the best for today, mate.
Carl, the way we like to end our interviews is we usually like to give you the last word. So anything you want to say? I know you probably want to shout out your Instagram, your Twitter here, so feel free, go for it. Whatever you like, mate. The stage is yours.
Yeah, no, if someone wants to look for it, they have to search for me. But I just want to say, thank you very much. Obviously, you guys are in Canada at the moment, and having been there a few times now, and when before COVID struck, my plan was to come over and try and build up some potential coaching within academy over there with Sheriff. Shout out to Sheriff in Toronto, because I'm very lucky to be around the world, but the passion and interest in Canada and Toronto was something I definitely connected to. So I just hope you guys can continue to think podcasts like this or academies in Toronto and around. Good luck to you all, and please, if anything I can do for you guys, continue to ask me, because I love to see the game spreading around the world. It's our game, it's everyone's game. I think sometimes we get lost in the fact that we're England and we've got we own the game. We don't. That's why I love to see kids playing in the street in India, or go to the academy in Toronto and see youngsters who haven't got role models necessarily like we do have in England. Like the nets are probably old and the surface isn't perfect. That's pure cricket for me, and I love being there, because that's where we all should start, and it's and I hope that the game continues to grow all around the world, and that's my passion really, I suppose. So good luck to you all, and long may it continue.